המבדיל בין קודש לחול חטאינו ימחול זרענו וכספנו ירבה כחול חכוי חובים בעלוילו יוי פונו כצל תוימה אקרו לו קילו לי גבוימה ויובו מהרשו ימי רבו סבו בויקר עושו בויקר וגם לא ילו ציד כסלו כהר טובויר על חטואי יבויר תבויר כי יוי מסמול כי יבוי וישמורו אלוהילו חולף בוי נסמין חוסי מי תמנו חוסי יוגעתי ביען חוסי אשכר לכל לא ילו Koi li bal yunto Pisach li shara minuto Sheroi shinim lo tov Sheroi shinim lo tov Kuto yisai resisei lo ilo Hey, yo say the no hirobe yo yo Hashabe be yat na feed boy le chem yedev yo be yishaboy lo lo Krasi chakavo, oy shieni, oy dachavayim toidieni, vidalos tevatzeni, mi yoy biyad loylo, tahei Mama say Ben yoimero Mama chisai Hayino Eloikawa hoiso Anoi saints mirois baloilo Lecho Nafshi Saroi Uyanim Zmirois Shiri Meroi Ki Lecho Nafshi Savaroi Nafshi Chomedo B'tzeil Yodecho Lobo Dava Babas Kol Rosa Soidecho Nafshi Chomedo B'tzeil Yodecho Lo das kol rosoidecho Nafshi chomedo b'tzeil yodecho Lo da babas kol rosoidecho Nafshi chomedo b'tzeil yodecho Lo das kol rosoidecho Nafshi chomedo b'tzeil yodecho Lo das kol rosoidecho Nafshi chomedo b'tzeil yodecho Lo das kol rosoidecho Nafshi chomedo b'tzeil yodecho Lo davas kol rosoidecho Nafshi chomedo b'tzeil yodecho Lo das kol rosoidecho Elech to Eloi Boishu. Yedid nefesh over Rachamon Shoi chavdecho el ritzoinecho Yedid nefesh over Rachamon Shoi chavdecho el ritzoinecho Yedid nefesh, oh, Rachamon Shoi chavdecho el ritzoinecho Yedid nefesh, oh, Rachamon Shoi chavdecho el ritzoinecho No yo yarutzavdecho Yarutzavdecho Kimo yayo Nishtachave El mulad Vurecho Yerablo Yedidaisecho Min nefesh v'chavol tevuam Yarutzavdecho Kimo yayo Nishtachave El mulad Vurecho Yerablo Yedidaisecho Min nefesh v'chavol tevuam I don't know where see oh you know Afshicho ilasa dosecho Oh don't know where I don't know where see oh you know Afshicho ilasa dosecho no, yo, 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 oh, 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 no. Hailing over what if on our love. We be young, no slow. You know, oh, oh, young, see you back. Oh, this music. Oh, this music. This is it, I'm baby. Solo. Simcha, soy love. No, you, no. Hailing over what if on our love. We be young, no slow. No, young, see better. No, this mama say. Oh, this mama say. This is not baby, you're so low. mit beroche atzloche Yeshivois lefuvois und nachas und chein Freilach lob mir der Shabbos begleiten und greiten nasude gorschein Jetzt kommt die Malke, sie ist doch a Pracht Spät in die Nacht alle Chaim in Macht mit einigen Gott zufrieden es wird dort die Nacht verbracht Freitag zu Nacht gehen ich heim von Schuweine Malochim gekommen und sind Shabbos mit Teira und Filo a bissal den Enter zum Beure gewinnt. Jetzt kommt die Woche, im Jahr, zurück zu die Geld, zurück zu dem Welt. Mit darf Koyach beikommen, als was euch geht, nicht kein Verstellt. Halt ihr auf die Awachung, wir wollen alle nach Shavuot. Die Woche ist der Fall, geben uns Schach, euch machen heilig, als was ist ledig, zu machen von dem kleinen Welt. Hat ihr Allah Yisborei, a heilige Zelt. Die Shabbos sie geht, nur mir stehen grün. Dann was man darf und freilich erlebt. Wenn die Shabbos kommt zu gehen, na jetzt wird. Alle putzen sich euch schön, sei groß und sei klein. Die Woche wird vor jeden Rein, na jetzt wird. Anaye Neshome es kommt zu gehen. Die Woche ist doch mit Verbrauch. Komm Shabbos heute, bist du alle Boss. Wie am Melech, Azoi und am Malke die Freude. Mit euch gefühlen kommen dann viel, der Chilik und nicht mit mir. Hat ein Azli, sehen jeden Kind, Schenkheit von mir, Chochme von mir. Euch der Beschäfer Freitag mit ihm. Etliche schon, wir machen das in dem Machol im Gorgute, Fußboden, Malave Malka, wird kommen zu gehen, David Meshicho, Koyu Zolo, es kommt schon in die Show, Eliyahu wird uns sagen, Moshiach ist da, und Mashiach bedrein, wenn die ganze Woche seit Shabbos nicht wein, gieß mir rein, ab bis alle Wein. L'chaim, Agote, was soll es sein? Mashiach ben David, Eliyahu Anovi, Eliyahu Batishvi, Eliyahu Agilodi. Imehida Yavo Elenu Yavo Elenu, Imehida Yavo Elenu, Mashiach ben David, Mashiach ben David. Isha Sidlishtalia, Isha Meidarapois. Ich pocki da kol besoyrois do boyrois ich zi nebo yashiv legoni malovois yashiv legoni malovois oy 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 ich yashiv lishtalia ich meyarois ich pocki da kol besoyrois do boyrois ich zi nebo yashiv legoni malovois Yashiv Levoni Balavoy. tishbi nu yeli yo agilodi di meiro yo yeli nu yo yeli di meiro yo yeli nu di Mashiach ben David di Mashiach ben David tishbi ashmoyni klot at khaynu al yadoy batoydo tishbi ashmoyni klot at khaynu al yadoy batoydo tashmi yidu bi besoyra toyba bi meiro hay toytsi yinu toytsi yinu me afeilo yo yidu oy tishbi ashmoyni klot at khaynu al yadoy batoydo tishbi ashmoyni klot at khaynu al yadoy batoydo Kashmi yidu bi besoyra toyba bi meiro hay toytsi yinu toytsi yinu me afeilo yo yidu Eliyahu anovi Eliyahu batishbi nu Eliyahu vakiloti Imeino yavo Elenu yavo Elenu Viveira yavo Elenu Mashiach ben David Sid lishtalya shemeya halokos wish pokid al kol besoyros tovoyvois ishti nemo the yoshiv leboni malovos the yoshiv leboni malovoi wish sid lishtalya shemeya halokos wish pokid al kol besoyros tovoyvois ishti nemo the Yeshiva Melave Malka, the Yeshiva Melave Malka. Eliyahu anovi Eliyahu batishbi, nu Eliyahu vakiloti. Imeiro yavo Elenu yavo Elenu, Imeiro yavo Elenu, Mashiach ben David. Eliyahu anovi Eliyahu batishbi. Eliyahu agilodi Bimeira yavo Elenu yavo Elenu Bimeira yavo Elenu Mashiach ben David Mashiach ben David O ishbi ashmoyni klot at khaynu al yadoy batoy ishbi ashmoyni klot at khaynu al yadoy batoy Ashmi inu bi so yira toyba bi meido Oy toytsi yinu, toytsi yinu, me afeilo li hoyinu. Oy ishti shbi ashmoyni klot at khaynu al yadoy batoydo. Ishti shbi ashmoyni klot at khaynu al yadoy batoydo. Kashmi yinu bi so yira toyba bi meido. Ay toytsi yinu, toytsi yinu, me afeilo li hoyinu. Anovi Eliyahu batishbi Uy Eliyahu agilodi Bimeiro yavo Elenu yavo Elenu Bimeiro yavo Elenu Imoshiach No Imoshiach Thank you. Oh, ye na na ya 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 hide ma hide. Oh, ye na 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 ya. Oh, hide ma hide. Oh, ye na no ya hide. Oh, na na ya ya ya, ma hida. Oh, na 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 na, oh, ma hida. Oh, na. Didi ya 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 ya. Oh yo, oh yo, yo yo yo. Didi ya oh yo yo. Oh la roi la roi la roi yo. Oh, yo, yo. Oh, hiro, oh, hiro, oh, hiro, oh, hiro. Oh, hiro. No. No.
A gute Woche. Ladies and gentlemen, our program will begin in 5 minutes. Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. Our program is now beginning. Please turn your attention to the screens as we present the past.
For 10 years, Rabbi Shab was thinking of founding a yeshiva in which Bachrim, B'nai Torah, would delve into the learning of Chassidus. There were many obstacles to this idea, but with Hashem's help, the time came to establish the yeshiva that he was thinking about for so many years. True, there were many yeshivas, and there was no shortage of places to learn Torah, but this yeshiva wouldn't only be for Torah alone. The purpose of this yeshiva would be to shine light. They would learn Nigla and Chassidus. Woven tightly together, it would affect the streets. The Rebbe Rashab's request from Hashem was that he should bestow upon the yeshiva an environment of Yiras Shamayim and Kabbalas Al Malchus Shamayim, where the students work on Avodah, action, and midos. Baruch Hashem, there are many yeshivas in our country that without doubt produced Rabbanim, Talmidei Chachamim, and Torah geniuses. Yet the intention of the founding of this yeshiva was not for this alone. The Rebbe Rashab wanted that our Talmidim should be Yirei Shamayim, who serve Hashem with their whole heart and do mitzvahs with a special love. And when they grow older and leave the yeshiva walls, each one of them would know his own job and purpose in life for the sake of Torah Tamimah. And then the geschmack of pure Yiddishkeit will shine wherever they live. Wherever they end up, there will be the light of Torah. 2 days later, the first 18 Talmidim were chosen, and Rabbi Shmuel Greiner Masterman was appointed to teach them Chassidus according to a schedule arranged by the Rebbe Rashab. The first day of learning began the next day, Chai Elu.
Taimachtemim Maishiana Takif La'ad Hatzlichana Tamim B'Mazavanenu V'Yam Kareinu. The yeshiva that was founded didn't have a name yet, so the Rebbe Rashab hereby named it Taim Chaitzimim, since the purpose of the yeshiva is that Hashem's Torah, both Nigla and Chassidus, should be Tamima, complete. The winds of Soviet Russia blew Lubavitch through gullus after gullus, but Taim Chaitzimim stood strong in whatever location Hashem replanted it. And then came the biggest move of them all.
Today, 82 years ago, on Tes Adar 1940, the Frierdiker Rebbe, the Menal of Taim Chaitzimim, arrived the shores of the United States. On that very day, he founded Taim Chaitzimim in America, against the prevalent attitude of the time that in America, Yiddishkeit is different. The Frierdiker Rebbe announced that America is nicht anders. America is not different. The roots of Taim Chaitzimim planted on that day bore fruits that indeed affected Yiddishkeit in the entire America and beyond. Year after year, decade after decade, the yeshiva continued to grow and stay true to its foundation of building Tmimim, Yiras Shamayim, with Midas Tayvais, who learn Nigla and Chassidus, serve Hashem with their whole heart, Chassidim who are Tmimim, complete.
We welcome to the stage our esteemed Menahel, Rabbi Simpson.
Guten Tag, everyone. Thank you very much for coming out tonight to this beautiful event in which we show our Hadras Koved and recognition to Tamchei Tamimim, to our Rebbes and Moras, and to our parent body. When partners in a business come together, it's a very special event, it's a very special time. And tonight, the partners in the chinuch of our children are here together celebrating the Yiddische, Chassidische Nachas that we have from our children, and we wish each other continued Yiddische, Chassidische Nachas. The theme of tonight's Malava Malka is past, present, and future. Amerika is nicht anders. The Zohar tells us, Yisrael, Eiraiso, v'kutshaberichu, kulochad. Yidden are one with the Eibishter and Torah. And through Torah, we remain connected to Hashem. Now we know that the Eibishter is Hoya, Hoive, V'yihiyeh, was, is, and always will be. Hashem Melech, Hashem Molech, and Hashem Yimloich L'Yolam V'od. And the same thing is true with Torah. Torah was given to us over 3,000 years ago, but yet every day we make a bracha on Torah, and the bracha is Noisein HaTorah, the present tense, that the Eibishter gives us the Torah. Because Torah is given every single day. And very soon when Mashiach will come, there will be Torah Chadosha Mi'iti Teitzei, the Pnimius, the inner light of Torah, will be revealed. And the same thing is in regard to Yidden, to Bnei Yisrael. From the first Yid, Avraham Avinu, and from when we were chosen as a people, throughout history to the present day, Bnei Yisrael are the children of Hashem. And lehachlifam bi'uma acheres efsher, to exchange the Yidden for another nation is impossible. Because we were, we are, and will always exist. And when we have Yisrael, Eiraiso, v'kutshaberichu come together, they transcend the elements of time and space. And this is the message that Tamchei Tamimim gives to its Talmidim. You know, this Shabbos we began a new Chumash, Chumash Vayikra, also known as Toras Kohanim. And right in the beginning of the Chumash, it says, Vayikra el Moshe. Vayikra el Moshe is the beginning of Chumash Vayikra. The Medrash tells us, Rabbi Yomer, that little children start learning from Chumash Vayikra. And that used to be the minhag many years ago. Today, we start primarily from Bereshis, but even when children today begin learning Chumash, they learn the first few psukim of Vayikra. And why is that so? And the Medrash tells us, Yavoyu tehorim v'yisasku b'tehorim. Let those who are pure, the tehorim, the children, the tinoikos shel beis rabban, the hevel she'ein lahem chet, let them come and let them learn the part of Torah that talks about the tehorim, which begins with the hakrovas hakorbanos, which brings purity to the person who brings the korban. There is the well-known story that I'm sure all of you know that happened with the Tzemach Tzedek when he turned 3 years old. And it came time for his Areinfirinish to Cheder. And his grandfather, the Alter Rebbe, brought him into the Areinfirinish. And there was a very special relationship between grandfather and grandson. We know that the Tzemach Tzedek's mother gave her life away, literally, for the Alter Rebbe, for her father, and for Chassidus in general. And before she passed on, she asked her father to please take care of her only son. And the Alter Rebbe promised her that he personally would be involved in his chinuch. And at the Areinfirinish, the Alter Rebbe turned to the Melamed, to Rabbi Avraham, and he said to him, start learning with Menachem Mendel. Start learning with the Tzemach Tzedek, Chumash. And he began learning with him from Vayikra. Vayikra el Moshe, and he called to Moshe. And the Tzemach Tzedek looks at his grandfather and says, Zayde, why is the Aleph of Vayikra a small Aleph? And the Alter Rebbe went into a lengthy discussion and explained to him that most of the letters of the Torah are written in average letters. But then there are some small letters and there are some large letters. And the Aleph of Vayikra is that small letter. We find in Divrei Hayomim, in the beginning of Divrei Hayomim, where the Torah mentions the generations from Adam Harishon, Adam, Sheis, Enosh. Adam is written with a large Aleph. And the Alter Rebbe explained to his grandson, and he contrasted this difference between the small Aleph of Vayikra, which was to Moshe, and the big Aleph of Adam, which is recorded in Divrei Hayomim. And he said, Moshe Rabbeinu was Onov Mikol Ha'odam. He was humble. He was the humblest person. And therefore, when it comes to Vayikra el Moshe, there's a little Aleph. Adam Harishon, on the other hand, was Yitzir Kapov Shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The Eibishter himself created Adam. And Adam felt how special he was, and he kind of felt a certain feeling of arrogance. And because of that, not long after, there was the Chet Eitz Hadas, the primordial sin of Chet Eitz Hadas, which became the Shoresh U'Moker for sin for mankind. And here the Alter Rebbe pointed out to him the difference between Moshe Rabbeinu and Adam Harishon, the small Aleph and the big Aleph. Everything is B'Hashgacha Pratis, and this Parsha was read today on Tes Adar Beis, the day that the Frierdiker Rebbe came to America and proclaimed America is nit anders. And perhaps we could learn a lesson and see the hashgacha of this particular day in what the Alter Rebbe said. Vayikra el Moshe, a kleiner Aleph, a small Aleph. Perhaps we can say that that symbolizes der kleine Shtetl in Lubavitch, a klein shtetl. In that city, in those small cities which were insulated, the Aleph, the Alufoi Shaloilam, the Kometz Alepho, der Pintele von oben and the Pintele von unten, that was very, very well given over to the children. And they understood that. And there was a general feeling of honor, of kavod for Torah mitzvahs in the klein shtetl. But then came the time when the Frierdiker Rebbe came to America. America mit a greisen Aleph, with a big Aleph. with all of its challenges that America brought and had with it. And here the Frierdiker Rebbe said, yes, it's a große America, but there is also an Aleph in America. And our avodah and our work is to reveal the Aleph in Odom, to reveal the Aleph in America, and to bring out the Alufei Shalom, the Kedusha, and the opportunities that we have in America as well. And that was very challenging, because we know when we read the Frierdiker Rebbe's memoirs, his diaries, we read that when he came to America that same day, he was paid a visit by Askonim, by people who looked after American Jewry. Perhaps they were Rabbonim. But they were Yedidim of the Frierdiker Rebbe. And they came to the Frierdiker Rebbe and they said to him, Rebbe, we heard your speech when you came off the boat. We heard what your message is and what you'd love to see America become. We're here to tell you that many have been here before you and have unfortunately not succeeded. And we're telling this to you because we don't want you to be disappointed if things don't work out well. Frierdiker Rebbe writes further in his diary, and he describes the first Krishma She'al Hamita, the emotional Krishma She'al Hamita, the first one that he said on the shores of America. But this was the message, and this was the shlichus of the Frierdiker Rebbe, to see to it that America will turn into a mokim shel Torah, a mokim shel Chasidus, and a mokim shel Yira Shamayim. There is a story that happened with someone who came to the Rebbe in the early years, in the 50s. And he said to the Rebbe that he felt very down of the level of Yiddishkeit that existed then in America. And the Rebbe said, yes, there are many, many Frume Yidden who despair from the level of Yiddishkeit in America. But the Rebbe says, I don't despair of that. I'm not afraid of that. And the Rebbe said that while you can't tell them to do anything, you could teach them to do everything. And this was the Rebbe's message that he gave him and the Rebbe gave us. And this was Avraham Avinu, the first Yid. Vayikra Sham b'Shem Hashem Keileilam. That Avraham Avinu called in the name of Hashem, Al Tikrei Vayikra El Vayakri. Avraham Avinu made others call in the name of Hashem, Keil Olam. And this, my dear friends, is Temchet Temimim. This is what we teach our children. It's the same Aleph, the Aleph of yesteryear, the Aleph of the other side of the ocean, the Aleph Ze'ira, the Vayikra El Moshe, the Hamshachas and Brachas of the Eibishter. To the hearts of every Yid is that same Aleph of the Größer Odom. And it's our job and our schus to reveal that Aleph in the hearts of our children. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the Rebbes, the Melamdim, and the Moras the principals and the directors for doing such a special job in educating our children. It's a 24/7 job with the achrayus and the responsibility, but the work that they do is seen, heard, and experienced by us and by you as parents. And we want to show our hakaras hatoiv. We want to express our thank you to them for the work that they do, day in, day out. And sometimes they're faced with challenges, because after all, they're teaching children in the Groisa America, and there are challenges, but they don't forget of the Aleph that is in America, the Alufei Shalom, the koyach that the Rebbe gives us and continues to give us. That koyach is seen on a day-to-day basis with the chinuch of our children. And we want to wish our teachers, our moirim, our moiris, and the administrative staff that you should have a lot of hatzlacha in your work. You should be benched with bonne chayo mezene revicha, nachas von die eigene Kinder, mit menuchas hanefesh and menuchas hadas, in order to be able to fulfill your mission and your purpose. And you should be zoiche to create shisulim beveis Hashem, v'chatzreis elikeinu yafrichu, to take those young saplings, ki ha'odam eitz hasada, plant them firmly in a way that they will never be able to be uprooted, with yira shamayim, with varimkeit, with a geschmack for learning. And in this way, you will have fulfilled your shlichus in raising a generation that we could say and be proud of. Riyu gidulim shegidalnu. These are our children. These are those who will learn in Temchet Temimim, and we are so proud of them. We want to wish you arichas yomim bishonim toives in fulfilling your shlichus. And with that, I want to mention that on the tables, you will notice there are little cards and envelopes. It's not for money, but if you have a thought and you would like to express a written thank you to one of the teachers, to one of the moras, take a moment. There are pens and papers on the table. You can write a thank you to your teacher and to the mora, and we will, Emirza Hashem, pass it on to them. As we stand at the threshold of the Yom Tov of Purim, let us hope that Lonu Ulachol Yisrael, there should be the bracha and hamshacha of La Yehudim Hoisa Oira V'Simcha V'Sosim V'Yikar, Lanu Ulachol Yisrael. Thank you very much, und a gute Woche.
Parents and staff, please join us as we explore the day-to-day chinuch in Tomchei Temimim.
A good Vach to you all, and thank you for coming. Tonight I will show you the making of a tamim. It starts when we're young with our Mara so dear, who teach us each day with love and with care. We daven, we learn, and we play with the toys. We make lots of friends with all the boys. The Parsha is not just something we learn. We live it, enjoy it, it's everywhere we turn. According to the Messiah, we learn Aleph Beis. In preschool, we grow in so many ways. with me up to the second floor. There's more to learn and more to explore. In Pre-1A, I have my first Rebbe. The transition is smooth, I'm feeling already. Korea's the foundation, we practice a lot. Kamat's Aleph O with my finger on the spot. No Talmud is ever left falling behind. Thanks to our new Korea room, each boy can shine. With tutors and specialized help for each need, coaching and encouraging until we succeed. In Kita Aleph Chumash Bereshis we learn, with a Hasidic twist on each page we turn. With exciting stories, the lessons come alive. Our minds are expanding, we develop and thrive. Now we move on to Kita Bays, where we start to understand each word and each phrase. In order to help us to learn on our own, we're challenged with tests to see how we've grown. Mi Amar Lami, who was speaking to who? What did he say and what did he do? Reading comprehension, take the pasuk apart. These crucial skills are the base and the start. Learning Mishnahs, we start in 3rd grade, not wasting a moment of our precious young age. We have specialized books that help us understand the complicated concepts the Mishnahs demand. As Tamimim, we work on our Meidais till they shine, with the Protes Award Program and Tamim Times. The rallies and assemblies when we all get together inspire us to improve and try to do better. In 4th grade, we start with Hachana Legmara. Us young little boys can understand as Svara. We work hard in Chumash, Mishnah, and Halacha. Our Rebbes inspire us with a proper Hadracha. As we move on to grade number 5, our Yedeis have grown to a substantial size. With hundreds of milim, our vocabulary has grown. We're almost ready to learn on our own. In Kita Vav Zayin Ches, there's no time to waste. We must cover ground at a steady pace. Shaina Halachais and Gemar Bifnin. That's when the real Haravanya begins. Every day we process and comprehend more. The joy of learning becomes part of our core. We delve into Hasidic concepts that affect us every day. Chayali Beis David helps us live the right way. Generation 7 is one of the highlights of our year. Our artistic and musical talents we share. Every aspect of education has a place in our school, from knowledge to menschlichkeit and lifelong tools. Each Tamim in Yeshiva is a whole world on their own. Our strengths and our value are continuously shown. Tamchet Tamimim builds our character within. I'm so proud to say, I am a Tamim.
Ladies and gentlemen, Malava Malka is now being served.
Sheinem Cholem Ob ich gesehen In der Beis Hamikdash HaShlishi Bin ich gewesen Kohanim sinnen makriv Korebo Nois Levim singen Shira Malos Moshe Rabbeinu lernt mit ihr Voice. Die Sanhedrin sitzt und hört hat ihn teure. Na koyein sinto der Menoire. Und nur dich a herrlichen Gesicht, es scheint sein Ponym mit a göttlichen Licht. Nur im sein Gewagel in dem Kron ich der Kennen schon. Das ist der der ganze Reulam steht mit dem Eure. Ist Megale, so des a teure. Und von Schlaf ob ich sie oi vergecha. Es wird schön bald kein Cholem mehr nicht sein. A Minutchen geblieben, Maschiachen mit Kamelponim sein. Ui, 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 schicker mit Freit, Gesundheit. Gehen wir alle heim, zurück in Cheder gehen, mit Moischen allein. Ui, ui, nicht geht ein geht hin, es wird schön bald kein Cholem mehr nicht sein. A Minutchen geblieben, Maschiachen mit Kamelponim sein. Ui, 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 schicker mit Freit, Gesundheit. Gehen wir alle heim, zurück in Cheder gehen. Mit Moischen allein, oh ja, meine Webe, oh, mein. A schönem Cholem, ob ich gesehen, in Jerusalem, und gekommen. Sie sagt mit Freit, Bruchim Aboyim, der lebt zu sehen, dein Licht ich neponim. Ich hab gehad so viel Zahar Gidolmoni. Hast du ausgewandert, tausender Jahren, oi, bist du mein Tagerkind, noch schöner geworden. Und nun seh ich Malachim gehen, sie führen mit Anigen, der Beschäfer allein, gekommen gestellt. Sei Liebe alle Jeden, alle begadein. Tzadikim tanzen mit den Chossen, es ist schon gerede, zu das Lüsen. Und von Schlaf ob ich sie häufig Ich geht dein Getin, es wird schon bald kein Cholem mehr nie sein. Am Minut gelegen geblieben, Maschiachen Mikabel Ponim sein. Ui, 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 schicker mit Freude, Gesundheit. Gehen wir alle heim, zurück in Cheder, gehen mit Moischenali. Oh, yo, meine Baby, yo, mein. Nicht geht ein Getieren, es wird schon bald kein Cholem mehr nie sein. Am Minut gelegen geblieben, Moschiachen Mikabel Ponim sein. Ui, 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 schicker mit Freude, Gesundheit. Gehen wir alle heim, zurück in Cheder, gehen mit Moischen allein. Es wird aber mein richtig und schön. Es wird sein richtig. Thank you.
Treba
und wir sollten alle zusammen lechayim. Ja, tut dich
Ladies and gentlemen, once again, please turn your attention to the screens. Prepare to be amazed as we unveil the future. A beacon of light, a project of the Rebbe Rashab that has survived and thrived since its inception 135 years ago. Tomchei Temimim is a pillar of our community. In Tafresh Nun Zayin, Tomchei Temimim started with 20 Talmidim. As the years went on, the yeshiva grew and moved across an ocean. In 1992, United Lubavitcher Yeshiva Tomchei Temimim was built right in the center of Crown Heights on Crown Street. Today, our yeshiva continues to grow, nurturing Talmidim, Yerei Shamayim, Lamdanim with Midos Tovos, who are Hasidim and above all, Temimim. As the Crown Heights community grows, our Moisid is growing. More Talmidim are joining each year. The yeshiva walls are full to capacity. Therefore, we are proud to announce that a much-needed and long-awaited expansion is underway. The landscape of Crown Heights will change as Crown Street reaches new heights. The walls of our yeshiva will be expanded to add 19,848 square feet of space with a brand new addition to our landmark building. We will be expanding our building with a 5-story addition in front of the current building on Crown Street. This new addition will add 6 classrooms to accommodate another 100 Talmidim. Tutors and special ed staff will finally have proper spaces to work one-on-one with students in our 3 new resource rooms. 2 new mental health offices will be built to provide a proper environment to support the development and success of our Talmidim. More additions include a beautiful new shul for the older grades to daven together, a music room, a recreation room, and a staff lounge. To top it all off, our expanded roof will include a state-of-the-art indoor gym with a full-size basketball court, which will also serve as a multi-purpose auditorium. This expansion is monumental and will benefit every single Talmud. Beautiful new classrooms, ample place to play, and proper areas for extracurricular activities will ensure that every student's mind and body is developing and thriving. We are so proud and excited to share this with our parent body. Tamim means complete. It's time to build Tomchei Temimim completely.
Did-it-Allah, ya, did-it-Allah, ya. Did-it-Allah, ya, ho, did-it-do. Did-it-Allah, ya, did-it-Allah, ya. Ho, did-it-do. Did-it-do, ho, did-it-do. Did-it-Allah, ya, did-it-Allah, ya. did it all la ya ho ya did it down did it all la ya did I la la oh la da did it all ho la dum did it did it all la ya 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 ho did it all la ya did it all hoy la dum did it all la ya 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 hoy did it all la ya hoy let it all did it all dum da dum da da ya ba 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 da 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 oh yeah yeah da da la 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 da 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 hey ba 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 hey ba 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 oh yeah yeah da 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 oh yeah da yeah did it all ya did it all ya oh yeah did it all ya oh yeah oh did it all hey the dum did it all ya did it all ya did it all ya did it all ya oh yeah did it all ya oh yeah oh did it all oh the dum did it all
Welcome to the stage for the keynote address, world-renowned speaker, Rabbi Y.Y. Jacobson.
When I grew up, since both of my parents come from the former Soviet Union, my father, Zechrona Levracha, was born in Mamontovka, which is near Moscow, and my mother, Zolzain Gesund, her family comes from Ukraine, from Poltava, and she was born in Georgia, South Russia. So, you know, Russian Jews, some of you grew up with Russian parents, some of you grew up with Russian grandparents. Russia is a very, very complicated country if you haven't figured it out in the last few weeks. So there were two jokes that I grew up with. Joke number one is a Jew once went to the Red Square in the Kremlin in Moscow, and he screamed out on top of his lungs, Khrushchev is a meshugene. Auf welche Sprache? Auf Russisch. You want to say it in Russian? You could say it in Russian. Ich kenne nicht Russisch. Okay, thank you. Very good. I think he used a different word in Russia, but I'm not going to repeat it. But the point was, Khrushchev is a meshugana. Within seconds, of course, he was arrested, he was put on trial, and he was given a double life sentence. That's 200 years in the Gulag. So the Jew asks the judge, he says, I understand one life sentence. I said Khrushchev is a meshugana, but why the double life sentence? And the judge said, because you committed two unforgivable crimes. The first is you insulted the head of state. The second thing is you revealed a state secret, which in a way sums up some of Russia. The second story was, what's this? Okay. The second story was a Jew went to the Red Square, and with a helicopter he distributed 1 million pamphlets, 1 million pieces of paper. Went all over the place. Immediately the KGB arrested him, and they sentenced him to life in prison in Siberia. Why? Because you were motivating the nation to revolution. 1 million pamphlets in the Red Square inspiring the nation to revolt. The Jew says, I don't understand. The pamphlets were blank. There was nothing there. They said, you think you have to write something? You think we don't know what it means? I say this not only because Tzjene Gelechter, the nightmares of Russia are back, the trauma of Russia is back, but also to appreciate tonight's event. Mein Yishmite Etzel Har Sinai. I don't know if you know this, but the Rebbe Rayatz, the Frierdiker Rebbe, the previous Rebbe, held a diary. When he came to America today, it was a Tuesday, 82 years ago, Tes Adar Sheni Tovshin, same day, today, Tes Adar Sheni. He came to the pier, and he went to the Grayston Hotel in Manhattan. The Rebbe spoke at the pier, it's printed, and then he spoke in the hotel. But there's another part from the diary. That night, imagine that night, after he arrived, 2-3 weeks on a boat, coming from Nazi-occupied Europe, Nazi-occupied Poland, he arrived in Manhattan. There's pictures of the Kabbalah's Panim. He spoke right there, and then he spoke in the hotel, and then he finally went to retire in the hotel room in the Grayston Hotel. And he writes this. He said this. He says, two people knocked on the door. They wanted to see the Rebbe Rayatz before he retired. They heard the Farbrengen in the hotel the day he arrived. And the Rebbe writes, the Rebbe Rayatz said, these were two emes Freund. They were real friends. They came from Chassidim. They were American Jews already. They were settled in America. And this is what they told the Frierdiker Rebbe on his first night in America. They said, we're worried for your kavod, and we're worried for the kavod of your parents and your Zaydus. We are frightened that you shouldn't disgrace yourself. Because when you came over the boat, you said that there's going to be a revolution. America is nicht anders. You're going to change America. The Rebbe announced the first day that he had a meeting that day, imagine. The day he arrived, he had a meeting. And tomorrow, Taimchit Mimim Lubavitch is opening up in the East Flatbush Shul, Oynik Shabbos. The yeshiva is opening. The first thing he did, this yeshiva. So they said, in nice words, you're making a fool out of the whole Chabad dynasty. You and your parents were such special people. And they said, Rebbe, ihr kennt nicht Amerika. You're from Russia. You're from Poland. You don't know America. Please, you got to tone it down. You have to change your vocabulary. What's going to happen is all your dreams will turn out to be colossal failures. Your ambitions will be shattered, and you're going to become, Chalila, the laughingstock of American Jews. Anna, please, hab rachmanis auf sich und auf Lubavitch. And don't speak this way. Your ambitions have to be much more modest. If you knew the Frierdiker Rebbe, what do you think his response was? So the Frierdiker Rebbe said these words. I have to say it in Yiddish, and then I'll translate. He said, Ich kann sich vorstellen, wie viel Tränen ich hab vergossen beim ersten Kriyashmash al-Hamita auf an Amerikanem Boden. Maybe you could now understand how many tears I shed during my first Kriyashmash al-Hamita on like what I said? On the soil of the United States of America. The words didn't make a dent because Bechlal, a Rebbe is an Atzmi. An Atzmi means you're not defined by circumstances. You define the circumstances. You know who you are, and you know what your mission is, and you're a divine ambassador. So it didn't make a dent. But the tears came from the fact that he realized that even his closest people are not in. They're not getting it. The Rebbe went on. He did his work. 82 years later, we know what happened to the United States of America as a result of the work of the Rebbe Rayatz and the Rebbe. We know what happened to Tomchei Tmimim Lubavitch in the United States of America and in all the sniffim around the world. But understand the tears that were shed this night, Tes Adar Sheni, early Yud Adar Sheni, 82 years ago. Those tears of a Rebbe who foresaw a future and dreamt and craved that his people and the people will ultimately be able to embrace it and identify with it. And you know, probably the best way to describe this transformation, the two ways of looking at a crisis, at a challenge, I think the best way to describe it is based on one scene that we're all going to read this week. If I were to ask you, you'll forgive me if I describe it this way, and I just like to bring things out in a vivid way. If I were to ask you to give me a psychological profile of Esther, what type of person was she? If I read the Megillah, the first 4 chapters, I would tell you, she was timid, she was reserved, she was very quiet, she was very modest. Her namesake, Esther, she was hidden, and she was fearful. And I'll prove it to you. It says she had no father, she had no mother, she was an orphan. So she didn't have that security. Mordechai raised her, and the Megillah says whatever Mordechai says, that's what she did. She was always loyal to him. When she finally grows older, she's abducted and now taken to a king. She's not given a choice. And finally, he chooses her as his wife. She never wanted. She can't even tell him that she's Jewish. So the Megillah basically says, all the girls that Achashverosh chose, they all asked for different things. The only one who didn't ask for anything is, she didn't even ask for anything. It's almost like the picture of a girl who went through so much and doesn't even feel she's allowed to ask for anything. And finally, when she's growing up, Achashverosh now abducts her, she's the queen, but nobody even knows who she is. Her name was really Hadassah, the Gemara says. So why does she have the name Esther? Because Esther describes what type of person she was. She was very hidden. Her identity was eclipsed. And then, when Mordechai says, go risk your life to save the Jews, she's like, you got the wrong person. I have been through enough. I have been through enough. Again, I'm afraid. You have to know my husband. He's a drunkard, Persian, meshugana, alcoholic, narcissistic, addicted personality. Why are the women smiling? Whatever, I'm not going to analyze that. I'll look this way. It's better. The men want to know what he just said. But what happens is, she tells Mordechai, I can't. My husband, you go in without permission. Yeah, you go in without permission. You come out with a head shorter. Leave me alone. Mordechai, find somebody else to jeopardize your life. That's what we have with Esther, the first 4 chapters of the Megillah. Suddenly, everything changes. Mordechai sends her back a message, and his final words are, maybe you became a queen for this moment. And suddenly, in a single moment, Esther reinvents herself. From a timid, reserved, quiet, passive, clandestine, secretive, private person. The Gemara in Sanhedrin Ayin Dalet asks, how was Esther even allowed to go to Achashverosh? It's Gili Arayas. You're supposed to sacrifice your life. Amar Abaya Esther Karka Olam Hoisa. Esther was passive throughout. She initiated nothing. She was completely passive. You can't blame her for anything. Suddenly, this passive woman, not only does she say, I'm going to go in, suddenly she starts telling Mordechai what to do. He's the head of the Sanhedrin. He raised her. He mentored her. And suddenly she says, she gives Mordechai advice. From this point, she calls all the shots. She is the one who directs everything. She devises a strategic plan of how to lure Haman and her husband into a trap. She saves the people. If I have to perish, I'll perish. And you scratch your forehead and ask, how did this transformation happen in a few seconds? What happened to Esther? Literally a new person. It's like a new soul, a new ticket on life, a new identity, rebirth. How? The answer was given by the Rebbe once at a Purim Fabrengen, Purim Tavshin Chav Beis, 1962. It was one line of Mordechai that became a game changer. Mordechai told her, Umi yoideya im la'eis kazois higat lamalchus. Who knows if this is not the reason you became a queen? At that moment, Esther suddenly got what you may call a neshama chadasha, a neshama yisera. What Mordechai was telling Esther was, nothing about your life is a mistake. Nothing about your life is a coincidence. You have lost your father. You have lost your mother. You have been an orphan. You have been raised by strangers, by a cousin. Mordechai was a first cousin. You have been abducted by a Persian monarch. The whole trajectory of your life was one long tragedy. Remember, Esther was a regular girl. Esther was a valedictorian of Beis Rivka, and of Beis Yaakov, and of Beis Ruchel, and of Beis Sarah, and of maybe Bnei Siyam, Bruriya, Shalamis, Neveh. I don't want to discriminate. She was valedictorian. She was a great girl. She was unbelievable. The trajectory for her life was a real Bas Yisrael. Suddenly she ends up the first lady of Amelech Tipish at Tzedreita Meshugana addict in Persia. Mordechai says none of it was a mistake. Mi yoideya. It's l'mayla min adas. Ada lo yoda. Im la'eis kazoy sigat l'malchus. But it was all purposefully orchestrated by the Rebbeinu Shalom that you should be the queen today, even though it happened 5 years ago, to save Klal Yisrael. When Esther sensed this in her bones viscerally, suddenly she was transformed. From a victim, she was turned into a leader. From a timid, reserved, fearful, passive person, Esther becomes the one who saves the day. That's, of course, why the Megillah is called Megillas Esther. No other character in the Megillah surprises us. Mordechai is predictable throughout. He's always the same tzaddik. Haman is always the same Hitler. Achashverosh is always drunk. Nobody surprises us. Everybody follows what the therapist said they're going to be in 30, 40 years. The only one who surprises us is Esther. She reinvents herself. How? The moment you feel in your bones, Le'eis kazoy sigat lemalchus, suddenly life doesn't define you. You define life. There is the fire in one's belly. The Gemara says in Soita, Ha'arayin noisei es noisav. The Arayin carried those who carried it. Some things in life, you're carrying it. You think you're carrying the Aron. You're not carrying the Aron. By carrying the Aron, you become carried. Esther, at that moment, when she identified herself with something larger than life, Le'ez kazoi sigat lamalchus, she was elevated to a different place. She became a different person. It's the only way I can explain what's happening right now with the graduates of Tomchei Tmimim Lubavitch, the 183 shluchim in Ukraine. I have many friends living in Ukraine. The first Mitzvah Shabbos after the war, the first Mitzvah, I don't know if you know this, I had the schus in 92 when the first building was built. Actually, I had the last recorded sikha of the Rebbe is Thursday, Vayakel, Chav Daled Adar Aleph Tavshinun Beis. The last time the Rebbe spoke was Shabbos. Monday was the stroke, Chav Zayin Adar. The last recorded sikha is Thursday night. I was there. The Rebbe said something I knew at the time was very strange. In fact, I was one of the writers of the sikhs, and I didn't understand what the Rebbe said. On Shabbos, he repeated it again. The Rebbe said, you can hear it. It's the last recording of the Rebbe that exists. Thursday, Vayakel, Chavdalet, Adar Aleph, Tavshin Nun Beis, 92. The Rebbe said as follows. It's Parshas Vayakel. Vayakel means gathering. So this is the week of Kibbutz Goliath. It's the week of gathering the Jewish people from exile to Eretz Yisrael. He said, there's still one country, and then he said, maybe two, where Jews can't leave to Eretz Yisrael easily. It's with a lot of danger. But most countries, they could go to Eretz Yisrael easily, and let's hope that this will transform the situation in this one country. Nobody knew what the Rebbe meant. Israel took out from Ethiopia people a year before. Jews of Iran mostly left, and actually the Iranians let them leave. Even Syria, they let them leave. The Rebbe said there's a country, maybe two. But the Rebbe said, he said, let's hope this Vayakel is going to end it, and they'll come to Eretz Yisrael, and they'll have Menuchas HaNefesh, Menuchas HaGuf. You can hear the recording. 30 years to the day, Thursday, Parshas Vayakel, Chavdalet Adar Aleph, Putin invaded Ukraine. 30 years, Tavshin Nun Beis, Tavshin Pei Beis, to the day. Thursday morning, that day, Ukraine was invaded. L'chatchila, they thought he's not targeting civilians. Everything will be fine. All the shluchim decided to stay. Mitzvah Shabbos, I called Rabbi Moskowitz in Odessa. In Kharkov. And I'm speaking to his son, Mendel, Rabbi Moshe Moskowitz's son, Mendel, who's raised there, grew up there, the shliach there. And there's bombs. He tells me he's in a shelter with all the kids and 11 families. They're in a shelter. They sang Shabbos, they fabreng Shabbos. I said, you sound calm. I hear bombs. Why are you so calm? He said, it's very, very difficult. And it's very, very serious. But you should just know that everything I learned in Chassidus, my whole life, everything I ever learned was for these moments. Everything I ever learned about Emunah, B'tachin, Mesiras Nefesh, Avos Yisrael, leadership, caring, taking a stand, Ichpatiyut, it was all a preparation, not for anything that happened before, for this moment. And he tells me, he says that when you know what your mission is, you can be calm in the most excruciatingly difficult moments. Of course, a few days later, when civilians started to be bombed, everybody realized they have to leave with their families, besides the few extraordinary heroes who are still behind in order to remain with their families, including my cousin Indiana Petrovsk and a few others who didn't want to leave their communities. But when you look at them, this happened Erev Shabbos. A friend of mine called up Rabbi Levitansky from Sumy. And he left. Sumy was besieged. Sumy was bombed very heavily. So he left with his family. California boy. So a friend of mine calls him up and says, besides all the money for the refugees and for the buses and for the communities and for the Jews who are behind and for the Jews who need a new place, I want to send you money for you and your family. What do you need? With a pshittis, with a simplicity, he responds. He says, for me and my family, you don't realize, we left before last Shabbos. So all of my kids have even Shabbos clothes. Not only do we have regular clothes, we have even Shabbos clothes. We don't need anything. We have even Shabbos clothes. What do we need? The whole world, whoever is watching, is startled. Those who went to Eretz Yisrael are 24 hours on the phone trying to settle, either bring out their communities or settle them as refugees. My friend Rabbi Yudi Tachtel in Berlin just welcomed 205 orphans from Odessa, took a hotel for 205 orphans, is feeding them, nurturing them with Rabbi and Rebbetzin Wolf from Odessa, and the president of Germany, Westmeyer, came to have lunch with Rabbi Tachtel and Wolf and their Rebbetzins and all the orphans. And he's standing there with a bunch of kids singing, "Oh, say shalom bimromav." And I'm rubbing my eyes. The president of Germany, standing near Rabbi Tachtel, the Lubavitcher in Berlin, singing "Oh, say shalom." And the question is, everybody here grew up with the Zelbe Kasha. What is this? What are the people made out of? And the answer is this line. The blood in Tomchei Tmimim is saturated with this line of Mordechai. Mi yodeya im la'eis kazoi sigat lamalchus. When you have a mission burning in your chest and heart, then you're unstoppable. Not because you're not normal, not because you're naive, not because you're not afraid, not because you don't have to pay bills, not because you don't have trauma, not because you don't have insecurities, not because you don't have challenges. Sadna da'arachadu. We all got our traumas. But what happens is, miyodeim leis kazoi sigat lamalchus. The Orain carries those who carry it. You become redefined by a mission statement. And that becomes your very identity. And you go into a different league. The Rebbe spoke at a dinner of Tomchei Tmimim in 1942, a couple of years ago. It was the 50th, Tafresh Nun Zayin. So, Samach Zayin. I learned in another yeshiva, so I have to do it this way. Samach Zayin, Ayin Zayin, Pei Zayin, Sadik Zayin. Okay, very good. 45 years, I figured it out. 45 years. That's why I know my English. That's why I got my English, by the way. Because when you have insecurity, when you have a lot of insecurities, you got to compensate. You know what I mean? Okay, so it's an inside joke. They know what I'm talking about. At the 45th anniversary, the Rebbe spoke about Tomchei Tmimim, and he asked, what makes the yeshiva unique? And he spoke about 3 different aspects. One of them was this. It's printed in the Rishimas. They found it years later. Nobody knew about the speech. Those who were there 42. In recent years, it was discovered. And the Rebbe said one of the things that makes it different is that every student is inculcated with the idea, the concept, that nothing in your life is a mistake. And if you end up somewhere, despite the circumstances, you are on a mission. So the circumstances don't trap you. You define the circumstances because it's all part of your mission. And if I would ask you single-handedly, what defines the difference between a person who's happy and a person who's miserable? What defines the difference between a person who has inner wholeness and a person who's ultimately a slave internally? So most people will say, well, if you had a good childhood, true, a good childhood helps. If your father and mother gave you the 4 S's, you were seen, you were soothed, you were safe, and you were secure. Yes, it helps a lot. All of these things help. But who grew up in a perfect home? Who? Who grew up in a... You're not raising your hand? Every life has challenges. It would be perfect to grow up in a perfect home, perfect environment. Doesn't exist. Since the Simpson, there's been a trauma that faces existence until the Geula. What's the key? The key is one line. Do I define my challenges or do my challenges define me? If my challenges define me, I'm a victim. If I define my challenges, I say, it's exactly this life story that allowed me to become the person I became today in order for me to fulfill that specific mission I have today. And every student of Timchet Mimim carries this in their blood in one way or another. And in a moment of crisis, the one facing 350,000 Jews in Ukraine, may Hashem protect all of them. That fire, that light comes to the fore in the most dramatic, intense way, to the point that people who are sensitive and conscientious and aware rub their eyes in disbelief and say, Mi yolad lies eila. Who created such neshamas? Who molded such souls? Who crafted such individuals? The yeshiva here was created by the Rebbe Rayatz 10 years after he came the first time to America. First time he came to America was 1929. I don't know if you know the Maisa. He came to raise funds for Soviet Jewry. You know the story? It's very interesting. He went around almost a year. Most Jews said, we have the money in bonds. At the end of the year, before you go back, we'll give you the money. That's when the Depression happened, 1929, and most of the money the Rebbe never got. People don't realize what he went through. Most of the money that he collected for Soviet Jewry stuck under Stalin, he never got because of this. There was one Jew who was a very successful entrepreneur. He had a factory for clothing. He came here like every refugee. He came from a Chabad family from Russia. So the Rebbe decided to go visit him in order to inspire him. The challenge was, like many Jews, he came to America and he became distant from Yiddishkeit and from his ancestry. So the Rebbe went to visit him, the Rebbe Rayatz. Now imagine the scene. The guy comes out and he says, who's waiting for me? So the secretary says, a rabbi. So he goes and he says, give the rabbi a check for $18. In 1929, a check for $18 was a check for $900. Nish gefährlich. So the Rebbe says, I didn't come for a check. I want to speak to him. So he comes out. He says, Rabbi, I have 5 minutes. He's telling the Rebbe, Rayatz, I have 5 minutes. What are you here for? Money? He says, no. He says, what are you here for? The Rebbe, Rayatz, all the Rebbeim, besides being holy, they were also brilliant. So he points to the kapota, and he says, the button in my kapota, yeah? He speaks to me in Yiddish. He knows Yiddish. He's a Russian Jew. The button is falling off. And I heard that you have a chush in sewing. So maybe you could fix my kapota. So the man, right, he's running a huge company of clothing. He taka knows how to sew. He says, that's why you came to me? He says, he nods. He says, where are you coming from? He says, from Riga, from Latvia. He says, from Riga to New York is 5,000 miles. You came by boat, 1929. Are you telling me that you traveled 5,000 miles so that I should fix your kapota? There's nobody to sew a button in Latvia? And the Rebbe Rayatz, whose eyes were the eyes of a Malach Elikim, looked at him and said, why is that unbelievable to you? He says, why is it unbelievable to me? Because I just don't believe that a person gets on a boat and travels 5,000 miles to fix a button of a kapota. It just does not make sense. Tell me why you're really here. So the Rebbe looks at him and says, granted. And now I want to ask you a question. The journey from Riga to New York is 5,000 miles. Now tell me, how long and how far is the journey of a neshama from heaven to earth? How many miles is it from a neshama who is part of Hashem, a chelik elekam imal? How many miles is the journey from heaven to earth? He says, probably infinite. So the Rebbe looks at him and he says, you can't believe that I came 5,000 miles to fix a button. And you want me to believe that your neshama traveled infinite miles just to be able to run a factory that sews many buttons? You want me to believe that? This he didn't expect. As our rabbi, he didn't expect. He was stunned. In a moment, the Rebbe transformed him. You have a factory, gewaldig, moidedik, but you think your neshama came down to the world infinite miles, me'igre ramalabira mikta, so that you could give us buttons for our jackets? I said this story at the bar mitzvah of one of my boys. So you know my brother Baruch has a good sense of humor. So when I finish, he gets up and he says, and the man went and he renamed his company Lord and Taylor. Not bad. And people are still asking me, it's taka that way? I don't think so. If you'll Google it, there's probably another reason for Lord and Taylor. But it was a good word. Lord and Taylor. You want to be a tailor? Gewaldig, moidedik. A Schneider is one of the better jobs these days. Safe, secure. You can always rely on it. Shmatas will always be available. However, the question that Toim Chitmimim puts into the child is, can I wake up in the morning and ask every day that question? Can I justify the journey of my soul, which is Atzmus Ein Sof Baruch Hu? It's an embodiment of Hashem himself. Not 5,000 miles, not 20,000 miles, but infinite miles. Thank you. Wow. But infinite miles here to the earth. Can I justify it? How do I answer that question? And it doesn't mean for the person who's living in Ukraine. Every person in his or her tchum, because there's always that one person whose life I can touch, that one student, that one child, my nephew, my niece, my friend, my stranger, for whom I can make all the difference. I want to tell you something I'm feeling. I travel a lot. There's a trauma in American Jewry now. Everybody knows that 80 years ago, American Jews did not respond to the Holocaust the way they were supposed to. It's a fact. Avada, people sent checks, people said Tehillim, but the bottom line is, even though who could stop Hitler? Only God. And ultimately the Allies had to get it together. Whoops. But fart, American Jewry, the Rebbe once said this at a Fabrengen after the 6-day war. American Jewry, he said, was very passive during the Holocaust. It was not happening. American Jews know this, and everybody feels it. And there's a guilt that's very deep in American Jewry since then. And now, of course, not to compare one era to another, but people are feeling this. There's a fire, people are feeling it. There's like this bikush. We can't say Hashemer Achi Anoichi. Cain says, Hashemer Achi Anoichi. Am I my brother's keeper? Yosef says, Es Achai Anoichi Mevakesh. Of course I'm my brother's keeper. I search for my brothers. What creates the difference between the two approaches? It's the essence of the Yeshiva Tomchei Mimim, where the Rabbeim created and continue to create people who are regular people. But they will never sit back and say, am I my brother's keeper? Their motto is, Es achai anoichi mevakesh. I search for my brothers. The Rebbe Dayatz once spoke about the mission statement of Tomchei Mimim. I don't know how many people know this. It's printed in Likutei Diburim. And he said, not often do you see, what's the mission statement of your school? And he says, Tomchei Mimim Lubavitch was built on 4 foundations. Now, if you would go around this room and ask people to say, what are the 4 foundations upon which Tomchei Mimim Lubavitch was built? I wonder how many people would be mechaven, you know, because somebody spilled the beans last week. It's a page in Likutei Diburim. You have to know where it is. The story about Rebbe Avraham Plotkin baking the matzah. Listen to the Rebbe's words, Rebbe Dayatz. Tomchei Mimim Lubavitch was built on 4 foundations. I'm going to quote them, B'lashon Harav. Foundation number 1, emes, truth, authenticity, integrity, truthfulness, honesty. Foundation number one. Foundation number two, it was built on Liebschaft, love. Foundation number two, it was built on Übergegebenkeit, dedication. Foundation number four, Getreischaft, loyalty. Authenticity, integrity, love, dedication, and unwavering loyalty. And he says, from the leaders to the students, and therefore from the students to those who were in yeshiva. It started off with the founders, the teachers, the Rosh Yeshivas, the Mashpiyim, the Mashgichim, the Mechanechim, the educators. Truth. It's all about truth, real truth. Nothing but the truth. Number two, as he says, every student had to feel the love like they could feel from their own father, biological father and mother. Number three, feel the dedication like they feel from their own father and mother. Healthy father and mother, that is, of course. There are others. We're talking about functional parents, normal parents. And number four, the same loyalty. And when you feel that loyalty, you could reciprocate. Those are the four foundations that he describes for the Yeshiva Temchet Mimim Lubavitch. Talk about being ahead of your time. This was said in the 1930s. When man gegeben fresk from here to China. I remember when I was in a yeshiva, I was in a different yeshiva, but I still remember a teacher telling a boy, ich had gegeben as a frask, as der chodesh kiddush levana, was to machen af de levana. I don't know if I should translate it. It's not the most nurturing statement in the history of pedagogy. Right? What we're learning today more and more is, what we're learning today more and more is, at least that's how I feel. When I watch a child and I see a child losing it, what they used to call in my days, chutzpah, right? It used to be like, where did he become such a chutzpahnak? We got to teach him a lesson. Today, I guess, from a little maybe experience, my instinctive response is, I want to know what's going on in his family. I want to know what's for dinner. I want to know what that kitchen looks like. I want to know what's going on in this kid's nervous system. I want to know what his amygdala looks like. Give me a CAT scan of his limbic brain. I want to see what's happening with his prefrontal lobes. I want to see. And you know what happens? It changes everything. When you believe in people, they believe in themselves. When you become an empathetic witness for people, when it's all about empathy, everything changes. Everything is transformed. And tonight we salute all of those educators, all of those selfless teachers and principals who day in and day out embody the four foundations that the Rebbe Rayatz laid down for Tomchit Mimim, including when he built it here on these shores 82 years ago, Emes, Liebschaft, Übergegebenkeit und Getreischaft. Altigui b'mishichoi elu tinoikes shel beis Rabban. Thank you to all those teachers who are in an avodas hakodesh that is often requires tremendous mesiras nefesh. Mesiras nefesh because day in and day out you're dealing in a type of avodah where there's often little appreciation and many complaints. And it's important at least once a year and maybe once a month to call up the child's teacher and say, I just want to say thank you. He came home. I saw his face. He was so excited about what you shared today. I just want to say thank you. And I want to tell you something. I spoke a few days ago to the Shliach in Bellevue, Washington. His name is Rabbi Mordechai Farkash. He calls me, and this is what he tells me. What a lesson in life, my friends. Listen to this. He says, I met a Jew from Yerushalayim who had a business. The business came on hard times, and he was in debt to many people in Yerushalayim, some tough people he got involved with, and they made his life so miserable that he started to get scared. And after years of suffering, you'll forgive me, he decided he can't take it anymore. He's going to do the unthinkable. He's going to make an end to his misery. This is a father, a husband, a Jerusalem Jew. He's going to work today, and he decided there's a bridge in Yerushalayim. You can easily go off the bridge, and you go in down a cliff into the abyss, and in 2 seconds, it's finished. He's going out of the house. He says goodbye to his wife. She doesn't know it's the last time they're going to see each other. As he's going into his car to go to work in Yerushalayim, she calls him by his name, and she says, wait. You're going to work. Do me a favor. Our son is a student in the Chebina Yeshiva in Yerushalayim. He dorms there, and he stays there, and he needs something. I prepared a package for him. Could you please drop off this package on the way to work to Chebina Yeshiva? Ooh, this was a problem, because he was going off a bridge, and the Chebina Yeshiva wasn't on the way. But he thought to himself, don't be Aza Rasha Merusha. The last thing you do in your life is you do a favor for your son. I'll kill myself on the way back from work. Ma'iyah. The Chevra Kaddish and Yerushalayim are always ready. Yoshe B'Seisa by day, Yoshe B'Seisa by night. The cigarettes are available. This is for the Yerushalayim. The Amerikaner verstehen nicht. Yoshe B'Seisa. Yerushalayim aves. He'll kill himself on the way back from work. He'll live another couple of hours. He takes the bag, he gets into the car, he goes to the Chebina Yeshiva. He stops by the door, he goes to the door, opens the door, and the mashgiach comes out, mashgiach of the yeshiva, the spiritual mashpia of the yeshiva. And he says, is it possible to call out this bocher? I have a bag, his mother wanted to send something to him. He said he's learning, let me just give it over to him. He says, okay, fine. He thought first he's a taxi driver. He says, and who are you? He says, I'm delivering the package. He wants to leave. He says, are you his father or are you just delivering it? He says, I'm his father. I'm his father. The mashgiach looks at him and he says, wow, what schus do you have to have such a boy? Tell me the schus. Azad dement. Your son is a diamond, a tachshit, a mensch, a heart, a cup, a neshama. So lovable, such a source of light, of sensitivity. We love every moment that he's in yeshiva. It's a privilege for us. I want to know, what did you do right to have such a boy? Anyway, he says, it's amazing who your boy is. Haguten Tag sei gesund. He goes back to his car and he thinks to himself, Ich gehe sich ärgern. I'm going to commit suicide because I'm in debt millions of shekel. I have such a boy. I'm going to take away from this boy his father forever, turn him into a yosim by choice. For what? Because of money that I owe? I have a wonderful wife. I have such a family. Am I crazy? He pushed knocked sense into his head. He went to work. He came home. He left Eretz Yisrael. He moved to the United States of America. He paid up much of his debt. He's connected now to a Chabad community in the United States. And he shared with the shliach the story, who called me. I said, why are you calling me with the story? He said, du wirst schon wissen, wie zu es nutzen. You'll already was machen scheide from them. So he was right. Think about it. We are often so stingy with words. Do you know what it means to call a teacher and say, I want you to know the impact you're having on my child? To call a principal, to call a moira, to call a mechanech, to call a mashpia, to call somebody and give them the feedback. And do you know what it is to tell a parent about their child? What it is to tell a child about himself or about herself. We need to stop being stingy with words. We need to get rid of the Russian trauma of emotional constipation. Learn from Zelensky how to express yourself emotionally. Isn't it amazing? Charlie Chaplin, he was a comedian. Charlie Chaplin transformed into Winston Churchill. Amazing. A Jew, a 44-year-old Jew. He was a comedian. He was by Kamenetsky at a dinner doing comedy skits. Scavengers and Gan Yisrael he did. Comedy skits. And suddenly, he became the statesman of the world. Biden schluffed. And Zelensky is like, hey, there's still something to fight for. And Americans, oh, really? There's something to fight for? We never knew there's anything to fight for. We thought the last thing there is to fight for is that boys should be able to be girls and girls should be able to be boys. Atkan. There's identity, there's a nation, there's morality, there's good, there's evil, there's life, there's death. One Jew, a comedian, l'chayra, stood up. How? The answer is, he heard that line from Mordechai. Mi yodeya im la'eska zay sigat lamalchus. And it changes everything. You become a different person and you change the world. He changed the consciousness of the world. Britain, Germany, even the Switzerland, the Yekkes in Switzerland who haven't woken up since 1922. Haben sich euch aufgeweckt. They weren't ready to do sanctions on Hitler, Yamach Shemai. Even they're doing sanctions. I don't know if it's going to help with Putin, whatever. I don't want to reveal state secrets. What do you see from this? You see from this the power of leadership, the power of authenticity, the power of love, the power of loyalty, the power of dedication. Thank you to dedicated teachers. Mazel tov for the Chanukas Habayis for a new building. Mechayil el chayil, varikoisi lachem bracha, ad bli dai. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rabbi Jacobson, for inspiring words. Just before we wrap up the evening, I figured I'll share a quick story. Many of you have heard from me before, but I feel tonight is the most appropriate to share. My grandmother, Allah Shalom, used to tell us a story about her father, Reb Chaim Minkovich. Years ago in Russia, they were living in complete poverty and hunger. She would say they didn't have food to put on the table. One day, a meshulach knocks on the door and says, I'm here to collect money for Tomchei Temimim. My grandfather turns to him and says, I literally have nothing. I can't even put food on the table. Unfortunately, I will not be able to participate. The Meshulach, being very understanding, says, it's okay, and he goes on his way. As the Meshulach leaves, my grandfather couldn't come to himself. How is it possible that I, a chassid of the Lubavitcher Rebbe, all I wish to do is support the Rebbe's Moisid, and here I am. I'm unable to participate. And with that, he has a thought. He leaves the house and he goes to the local dentist. He tells the dentist, in my mouth, I have a gold tooth. I'd like you to pull the tooth out. He pulls the tooth out. He sells the gold, and he finds the meshulach, and he tells them, here is money. This is my participation in supporting of Tomchei Temimim. I felt that story, to be repeated tonight, really comes full circle. We hear in America, years later, a free country. Tomchei Temimim is standing, Tomchei Temimim is growing, Tomchei Temimim is expanding, and Tomchei Temimim is building. This is thanks to our Menalim, our Malamdim, our Moras, our support staff, the bus drivers, the tutors, and of course the dedicated parent body that make this Moisid what it is. I would just like to take a moment to thank my dear wife, Sarah, standing by me. It can get rough, but really, thank you standing by my work in Avodas HaKodesh. Also would like to take a moment to thank those who helped make this evening the success that it is. Rabbi Moshe Goldstein, Rabbi Yossi Talashevsky, my good friend Shneir Najjar, my shvager Moshe Schmuckler, Chani Greenbaum. Thank you all very, very much for the work you've done to make this what it is today. I'd like to take another moment to say thank you to the staff of the back office who come to work every single day. They work behind the scenes to ensure that the yeshiva runs as smooth as it does, and they do a tremendous job. Particularly for tonight's event, I'd like to say thank you, Chani Wolf, Chana Esther Mizrahi, Rachel Myers, Iti Mirazov, Sterna Blum, Zlata Margolin, Rachi Laufer, Sterny Rutsky. I'd like to say a special thank you to Mary Dunin for overseeing every last detail of tonight's event, and every project that we do is done at 100%. Thank you very much. Thank you all for coming out tonight. It's overwhelming to see the beautiful turnout for the parent body. It says a lot. It says how devoted we are to this Mosid. It's in order for it to be successful, we got to do this all together. And Emir Hashem will continue growing, expanding, and giving the Rebbe nachas. And of course, our children will be the most to benefit. On the way out, there's bags with your names on it. Everyone at RSVP, you'll see there's a name tag. It's on the women's section primarily. There's gift bags on the way out. Enjoy. Thank you again all for coming. Agut Tavach.
This is really off script. I think everyone here knows, sees, and understands that over the last few years, there has been unprecedented growth in our Mosid. From a Gashmistic perspective, you walk into the building, the preschool, beautiful hallways, classrooms, and you walk up to the higher floors, classrooms with modern equipment, a Kriya room. Baruch Hashem, we were able to give increases in salaries to the Rebbes and Moras. And of course, the upcoming exciting extension and building of the yeshiva. From a Ruchnistic perspective, there has been an upgrade in the curriculum. There has been an upgrade in areas that have to do with the Ruchnius of the yeshiva, of the Mosid. There is one person who stands behind all of that, and tonight I want to show recognition to this one person, Rabbi Yossi Langsam. Not finished yet. And I would also like to back up my words with Maisa Bepoyel. Want to give you and share with you a token of appreciation for the wonderful work that you have done. Instead of opening up the wrapping, I'm just going to read the inscription presented to Rabbi Yossi Langsam for his exceptional dedication to the yeshiva in the past, present, and future. With deep appreciation, Yeshivas Temchei Temimim, Crown Heights, Metzoi Shabbos Kodesh, Parshas Vayikra, Tes Oder Beis, Tovshin Pei Beis. May the Eibishter bless you and your wife and your entire family with gesund, mit a freiliche Herz, mit Yiddische, Chassidische Nachas. Continue your work. I'm just amazed by the energy and the power. Continue with it. Und der Eibishter soll euch benchen mit Bonne Chayu und Seine Reviche und Bekulam Reviche.
Amen. Amen. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us this evening. Your presence demonstrates your strong support for your son's yeshiva. Please collect your family gift bag on your way out.
Layudim, ay sayra, ay Rabbi simcha v'sasoin likor. 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 Quem tinha lá no Deus e morreu sem ligar. Quem tinha lá no Deus e morreu sem ligar. Quem tinha lá no Deus e morreu sem ligar. Quem tinha lá no Deus e morreu sem ligar. Na 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 na.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming. We're now going to have benching, followed by